The music actually is not only on a par with film, but in some ways surpasses most films. There's almost a requirement, certainly an expectation, that there be experimentation and innovation in video games, that the music is somehow striving to do something new and something really fresh and powerful, which isn't always the case in film.
If any series has improved with each installment, God of War has. From the headstrong, overambitious, and outright cruel Kratos of the Greek saga, to the stoic, thoughtful, and seldom spoken Kratos of the Norse saga, God of War has developed into what I believe is one of the best stories of our time, and the music of the series encapsulates this journey perfectly. We are going to listen to and dissect sections of the main themes from each saga. I will go over their construction, similarities between the themes, the imagery and symbolism implied by these pieces, and finally, how Bear McCreary combines these musical pieces to represent how Kratos has grown. I'm going to be talking about the games assuming that anyone watching this has played them, so spoilers ahead. I'm also going to be discussing a few concepts of musical theory, though hopefully not so in-depth that it will be too hard to follow. Let's dive in. This is the main theme of God of War 3. Right from the beginning, there is tension building as discordant strings start to play, signaling to us that something terrible is coming. This tension then erupts into rhythmic chanting. This vocal riff immediately tells us how threatening Kratos is. In terms of musical theory, this riff goes from the flat second of the scale to the 1 of the scale. The scale in this case being D minor. This transition is aptly called a minor second. It is frequently used to build suspense or to create a sense of danger. Think of the theme to Jaws, which also uses a minor second transition, but in this case, it ascends from the 1 to the flat second. Choir is used in all sorts of settings and is great at creating a sense of scale. Like the Nazgul theme from The Lord of the Rings, Duel of the Fates from Star Wars The Phantom Menace, or the first hunter during the second phase of fighting Gehrman in Bloodborne. Kratos is the god of war. It only seems natural that he is introduced as we hear this angry and intimidating chant. After setting the mood, the chanting drops out and allows the main melody to come to the forefront. This string melody is quite simple, but still gets across a lot of different feelings, such as triumph, pride,
no! This is my war, not yours.
Strength, and a touch of sadness. This melody also uses that minor second transition that I mentioned before. In this setting, the minor second is telling us that we are not using a typical scale. We are in a specific scale called the Phrygian mode. This scale is frequently used in ancient settings such as Greece, Rome, and Egypt. So this melody not only efficiently tells us what to feel, but also where the story is taking place. I used the term riff earlier to describe the chanting choir. That's because this track is similar in many ways to a metal song, in terms of rhythms, the scales being used, and the overall vibe. Do you hear what I mean? We're only about a minute into this track, and we already know so much about who Kratos is just by listening to his theme. He is a powerful person filled with anger. He is on his way to Olympus, bringing destruction with him. Yet, there is a sadness to this person that you can hear in the main string melody, telling us that what's on his mind, above all of his rage, is his sadness at the loss of his family. The track continues to build, adding blaring horns to the vocal riff as the melody climbs and transitions into another key, or modulates. Modulation is commonly used in music to create a shift in mood or energy. Here, it is building the intensity to an even higher point, Kratos' rage continuing to grow as he wreaks havoc. The track briefly dies down in order to build anticipation before modulating again, as if Kratos' rage knows no limits, and that he will have his revenge on the gods. The song soon comes to an end with the choir letting out one last chant.
My method into any project is really through the characters. So this game, perhaps more than any other in the franchise, it has really well-developed characters. I mean, it's really a well-written story.
The Norse saga, while a very different game and featuring a much different Kratos, has a lot of the same key elements to its music. The main theme for God of War 2018 begins, much like the previous saga, with choir, which takes the main melody, accompanied by low strings. It's getting across a lot of the same information, that this person is larger than life, that they are a force to be reckoned with. But this time, it is not nearly as erratic. It doesn't have the same anger, it doesn't elicit the same fear. It is steady and determined. The melody climbs a minor scale. Nothing fancy, no atypical keys. It is simple and effective. These already apparent differences between the two themes are saying a lot about who Kratos is now. Even though he has left his old life behind, Kratos' history, his anger and rage, symbolized with the use of a minor key, still remains. This repetitive and simple melody is who Kratos is now. He lives a simple life, his days are uneventful, he takes time to consider his actions. But he is still a god, and he has a new journey ahead of him. There are a few references to the Greek theme in this track. The most obvious one, in my opinion, was the modulation we just heard. It changes from C minor to A minor, a minor third, which is the same degree as the first modulation we heard in God of War 3. The simplicity of this melody allows it to be used in many ways throughout the saga, whether it be triumph, recollection, or fear.
And you may lose him forever.
There is much about me I would not have him know.
I briefly mentioned modulation before, and how it can be used to change the mood of a song. In the last track, it was used to increase the intensity. Here, it is being used to take the song from the simple and steady chanting to a brief yet powerful height. All of the instruments come in to hit these 3 bold and triumphant chords in unison, as if it is a glimpse of Kratos as more than a simple man living day to day in the woods, but as a god. The song then modulates back down to the original key and repeats the main theme, accompanied this time by rhythmic strumming and additional percussion. This marching beat is Kratos beginning his new journey.
Not the soul. Better. I've been teaching you to survive. Listen here. Must be better than this.
As a composer and as a fan, I want to go into a sequel and hear something that gives me exactly what I want and exactly what I don't know that I want. What do I want as a fan? The same thing. I want to hear that same theme again. But what do I need is new information and a new perspective on that material.
On December 12, 2023, the Valhalla DLC was released. This DLC acted as an epilogue to Kratos' story at the end of Ragnarok, and it cements Kratos as who he is now, because of who he was. The DLC features a brand new soundtrack, including remade tracks from the Greek saga. Throughout the entirety of the Norse games, the original themes never made an appearance until now. This alone shows how the game developers really understand how important the soundtrack to a game is. Imagine the massive level of restraint they had to not open the newer games with the classic and saving that for a moment in the game where it would have a much greater effect. I find it so impressive, and that's not even the most impressive part of the new soundtrack. After overcoming his doubts about whether he is worthy to take a seat on Freya's new council, Kratos confronts his past self. As he sees himself sitting on his old throne, the melody from God of War 3 begins to play.
What can I say to you?
Softly and distant, as if coming from a dream.
Remember how it felt to take that throne? All of it.
Then, as Kratos begins to realize how his past has shaped him into the god he has become, the Norse theme briefly emerges. The two themes continue to play back and forth as Kratos goes between confronting his old self and facing who he is today. The music during this section of the game is subdued. It isn't trying to grab your attention, it isn't trying to stand out, and that is what makes its climax so effective.
You chose!
As Kratos accepts his new throne, the Norse theme is brought in with a full choir, but not the simple and sturdy chanting like it was when the saga started, but in a hymnal harmony. A hymn is a piece of music written for and played during church services. There is nothing, theoretically, that makes a song a hymn. A hymn is defined as a piece of music written for the purpose of adoration or prayer. This is telling us that Kratos is now someone who is worthy of being a god, at the same time as Kratos is realizing this for himself. As the screen fades to credits, the real beauty of this piece begins. As the music plays on, the two themes begin to layer on top of each other, changing each other. harmonies created by that minor second of the Greek melody caused the Norse theme to have to change in order to blend with the new notes, creating a brand new melody while keeping that same pacing rhythm. Finally, the instruments build up to the Norse theme, completely reharmonized. Originally, the melody plays over a constant minor 1 chord. In this new piece, the chord progression starts on the minor 1, then moves to the major 6. The melody then, instead of resolving on the 1 chord, which we would expect to hear, resolves on the major 3 chord. These two chords have a special relationship. As you can see, they share 2 notes, meaning that a melody written on top of 1 chord will usually work for the other. The reason that this works is because the major 3 chord is the relative major of the minor 1 chord. What this means is that a scale starting on the minor 1 has all of the same notes as a scale starting on the major 3. This is a great technique for reharmonizing and recontextualizing a melody. A pretty simple trick, and one that has not been done before in this soundtrack, making the impact of this change incredibly potent and effective. The Path, composed by Bear McCreary, is one of the best cases I've come across of music that develops alongside its story. Kratos' speech at the end of Valhalla is mirrored and bolstered by this piece of music. Taking influence from the past games of the series and reintroducing them and blending them into new music, symbolizing that Kratos has been shaped by the god he was, through turmoil and rage and loss and regret. He has become something he never thought was possible, a god of hope.